Thank you for joining us here tonight. We'll be getting started in just a few moments.
Hello, everyone. My name is John, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge, of course, that McNally Robinson is located here in Treaty 1 territory, and the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Nunavak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Red River Métis. In addition, of course, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. I'm so pleased to welcome you all here in person and online for the Winnipeg launch of The Future Belongs to Those Who Fight, Climate Revolution for Beginners by Todd Dufresne. I'm very grateful to McGill-Queen's University Press for their support of this book and event, and of course to Dean Pritchard of the Winnipeg Free Press for coming on board to host tonight's conversation. Following some words from Todd from the podium, there'll be a conversation to my left. After that, there'll be an opportunity for you folks to ask questions, so allow those to percolate in your brain over the course of the evening. I'll approach you with the microphone at that point so that your question is audible. And at the end of the event, I'll be back for some exciting signing procedural announcements, so please stand by for that time. But for now, I have the great pleasure of introducing tonight's guests. Someone once said a journalist is just a reporter in a good suit. Our host, Dean Pritchard, doesn't own a good suit, but he knows a good lawsuit. Since covering his first trial, thank you. Since covering his first trial for the Brandon Sun in 1999, Pritchard has logged more time in a courtroom than many of the veteran lawyers whose cases he has followed. After leaving Brandon, Pritchard spent 12 years on the court beat for the Winnipeg Sun, returning to the beat in 2019 after a brief stint as a Free Press copy editor. In covering cases that often capture people at their lowest, Pritchard strives for fairness and accuracy without sacrificing the humanity, the core of the stories. Our featured guest, Todd Dufresne, is a Canadian philosopher and the author or editor of a dozen books, including the 2019 book, The Democracy of Suffering, Life on the Edge of Catastrophe. His new book, The Future Belongs to Those Who Fight, is a call to support utopic realism, a vision that embraces empathy, freedom, community, and universal human rights. It lays out what might be the only path to a world worth living in, left populism. Please join me in welcoming Todd Dufresne.
Thank you, John. That's very nice. And Dean, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. I thought I'd say a few words about the book, and then I'll read a passage from the book just so we get an idea of what it's about. And maybe if I tell you what the book's about, you won't even have to buy it. No. The book is organized into a preface, introduction, and 5 what I call reports. I did a podcast today and somebody asked me why they reports. Well, part of the reason I call them reports is because I'm framing this as something I coined called journalist philosophy. And this is just philosophy trying to deal with a crisis that is happening now without the aid of 50 years of retrospection, as I like to put it. We don't have the time for that. So we're bound to make mistakes, but I treat all of journalism, world journalism, as a kind of research aid in writing my work. And I rely on people that are smarter than me, more informed than me, to tell me about work that is in the sciences beyond my capacity to understand, without a nice secondary read on it, and to direct me to areas that I think I could benefit from looking at more closely. So climate journalism is reflected in these reports. I didn't want to call them chapters, because what I'm trying to do is declare that some of the stuff I'm talking about is like reporting. It's not an essay. Reporting is based on some facts. I tried to lay out some of those facts that are known. One of the basic facts for me that is known is that climate change is real. That we're still talking about it is ridiculous, as that, whether it's real or not. And in a way, we don't really need any more proof from scientists that it's real. We certainly know that it's getting worse. But I think what we need to do is wonder how we're going to live with climate change. What's going to happen to us as a society? What's going to happen to our culture? What's going to happen to even something that seems esoteric to the problem of climate change, which is how we think about things, philosophy or psychology, probably you can see it. So the first, report is called Climate Economics. The second is Climate Philosophy. The third is a case study from everyday life recently, which is the pandemic. What does it have to do with climate change? And when I say climate economics, of course, I really mean capitalism. And when I say climate philosophy, what I really mean is something like the Western doctrine of individualism, technological rationality, or instrumental rationality, instrumental reason, that leads us with a world that puts technology and scientism ahead of human beings. I argue in a way that this philosophical doctrine kind of works hand in glove with capitalism to, let's just say, to cut to the chase, puts profits ahead of people. We turn people into things. A certain kind of philosophy helps us turn people into things. Capitalism does that in its operations in the world through industry and commerce and so on. So I'm just kind of laying out in reports 1, 2, and 3 what got us here, and the here at the time was COVID. What connection did it have to how we responded to COVID, and what can we learn from that in terms of climate change? I take it as a case study. And the short answer is that COVID showed us what climate change will look like, but climate change will be much, much worse. The impacts will be worse. And it also shows us something that is, uplifting, which is that we responded to the problem of COVID by shutting down industries for a couple of 3 months. That was an impossibility. I mean, the things that we have to do to stop climate change are impossible. But when we are faced with a crisis like COVID out of the blue, we actually did respond to it. We could respond to it. We have the capacity to respond to it. We just choose not to. So that's kind of what the story of that report is about. Well, all 3 of those I delivered in different versions to CBC Ideas back in 2022 or 21, I can't remember. I've updated them and made them better, I think. But for me, because I wrote them a while ago, the newer stuff that I wrote as I was trying to get the book published, and then rejected and published and rejected, and I kept working on it. Reports 4 and 5 are, for me, are the most important parts of the book. And they're important because I'm not just talking about how we got here, which is to say, the kind of mindset, thanks to Western philosophy, probably conceived, capitalism, but what we can do about it. And that's basically 2 sections on climate politics, really. Although the report number 4 is called Climate Etiquette and Pathological Politeness. The pathological politeness is something I see everywhere. When I tried to get the book published, some of the academics responded with pathological politeness to the book. You know, they didn't like that. My original title was Chop Chop, Let's Eat the Rich. That really offended them, you know. And the only reason that it's not called that now is that McGill-Queen's let me know that Chop Chop is the name of food books, and it would become a problem for marketing. I'm not sure. Eating raw food, you know, like. But anyway, so the title "The Future Belongs to Those Who Fight" is a better title, but it has the same inclination. It's something that is pretty aggressive. The tone of the book is meant to be a manifesto. I lay out the facts, and then I say, what can we do? And one of the things we can do is continue moving along in the mode of liberalism, which I was just an ordinary liberal, middle class, now middle class white male liberal. It doesn't work. It's not working because we just want to make little changes. We want to make it just a little bit better. We want to talk some more about it. Both positions, let's hear what their position is. And let's try to come to a consensus. There's no consensus with people that are spouting nonsense, which is what the whole MAGA movement is about. Climate deniers, it's nonsense. There's no middle point between it's real or it's not. It's real. Now what do we, you can't even talk to these people. So it's become aggressive. But that's because the other side is aggressive. And I'm saying we need to fight back. That's part of what I'm saying. We gotta stop being so polite. And the book is not polite. I have some salty language in there, and I'm gonna read a little bit to prove it. And then the final section on climate politics is really something that occurred to me today. You know, if there's a bunch of action items I have in here, numerous kind of action items, little things, the kind of minutia that I thought about because I was writing a book like this. You know, what are the things we can do? What are the little things we can do? But the truth is, it occurred to me today that the action item that we need to do, which is in the title of the book, is we need some sort of revolution that replaces capitalism with something else. And that's why it's not changing. That's why nothing has changed, is because capitalism is in charge. You know, every time Trudeau comes in, oh, he's going to do something. He doesn't do anything. He's going to grow the economy. Then when Mark Carney comes in, he's got a book on, he talks about climate change. He's going to do something. Well, we're actually going to just double down on the military-industrial complex and make our money through war and murder. And that is not the way forward. That's the way of the past. That's what the American empire has been all about. And that's not going to help us move forward. It may make some money in the short term, but it's going to destroy the planet. Yeah, it is destroying the planet. So, there you go. There's my general discussion on what I'm saying in the book. The action item that we need is revolution. We need a whole bunch of little things we could do too. But to get caught up in those things is to be like a liberal and say, well, but if we do these three things, really we need something bigger than that. We need big change. Okay, here's a couple of pages, not too much. It starts with, I'm writing here about Luigi Mangione, the guy who shot the CEO in the back in New York City. Here are the facts. Capitalism caused irreversible climate catastrophe, and then capitalism collapsed into something worse, techno-feudalism. A shift realized by all the dude bro sociopaths and wannabe oligarchs like Musk, Bezos, Thiel, Karp, Fink, Zuckerberg, men just as odious as the CEO Mangione, allegedly shot in the back for withholding insurance payouts. The socioeconomic conditions of everyday life won't improve until the 2,781 billionaires, it's over 3,000 now, but most especially these cloud capitalists are stopped. There's no room left to negotiate a middle path toward a kinder, gentler form of capitalism. There's no room for compromise with billionaire corporatists who hate the people and hate democracy. Big spenders who in 2024 forked out $2.6 billion to buy the US election, 160 times the amount they spent in 2010 when the Supreme Court first made such influence not only possible, but illegal. Granted, the elites have always hated the masses and their freedoms. But since these neo-feudalists have amassed unprecedented amounts of money and, consequently, unprecedented political and technological power, they have morphed into an entirely new species of asshole. The kind that takes its every whim as a right waiting to be realized, damn the costs to everyone else. The kind that will not compromise. The best example is Elon Musk, a dangerous, drug-addled, vicious man-child with no self-awareness, empathy, or boundaries. The best example of a state that embodies these anti-virtues is Israel, which treats Gaza as an open laboratory for testing murderous AI technologies and weapons that inevitably boomerang back home to the streets of America. Consequently, we're no longer really debating left and right ideologies as they were framed in the 20th century, even less so the old divisions between liberal and conservative, Democrat and Republican, red and blue states. The masses clearly and understandably despise both parties. We are debating our right to exist, us versus them, the bottom versus the very, very top. By extension, we're also debating the rights of humankind and human civilization to exist, while all the elites work hard, to say spend hard, to create their own cryptocurrencies, a transhuman future, a singularity beyond the biological, colonies of autistic incels living on Mars, and an AI plus quantum revolution that will render work and workers redundant. We are not invited to their parties. The masses, whether they know it or not, are therefore obliged to play the biggest possible role in a global struggle between good and evil, because evil is winning, starting as always in the global south. As bluntly observed by Amitav Ghosh, the Indian scholar and novelist, climate change, he writes, is a, quote, war of the global rich against the global poor, and they fully expect, indeed they want, the global poor to die. This is the part that's not spoken out loud, end quote. Or as David Wallace Wells similarly remarks, quote, my personal feeling is not that rich Westerners are unmoved by climate suffering in the world, it's that they're gratified by it. They see it as confirmation of their superiority and their privilege, and they aren't unhappy about it, end quote. Shocking stuff for sure, but consistent with the way the very wealthy have always viewed the very poor as surplus, dispensable, garbage. Only today the very wealthy have the means to eradicate them, and not only in the global south, and in fact, not only the very poor. And so civilization with one foot in the grave is collapsing. That's page 100 to 101. We're going to talk now. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Well, like a lot of you, I am meeting Todd for the very first time today. But it's not the first time that we've talked about climate change. Now, I understand it might be last year I was waking up with an overwhelming sadness every day, like probably a lot of you. And I decided I want to work on a story about the sort of existential moment we're living through right now, and try to examine how we can navigate through this feeling of hopelessness with the aid of a few professionals, a historian, a psychiatrist, a spiritual leader, and philosopher. So we came across Todd's book, The Democracy of Suffering, and thought he was looking at a lot of the same things I was interested in. So we called him up, and he was gracious enough to give me a lot of his time. And his insights added a lot of intellectual heft to a story that was eventually published with the very sunny headline, Despair. What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing. Say it again.
Unsurprising, or surprising, that story turned out to be the least read piece I ever wrote in the press. Through no fault of Todd's or hopefully mine, but I think it was more reflective of just how reluctant people are to really address the issue. So I was going to open up with a jokey softball saying, this is what we call in journalism a softball question. Are we doomed? But I think the very fact that you've written this book and are so passionate about it, you see a path forward. So I'd like to just jump into the book. And this is in all senses a compliment when I say that in the future belongs to those who fight. You write with what I would call a punk spirit, and as you mentioned, some very well earned expletives about the need to storm the ramparts, as it were, and move past this climate etiquette, as we call it, stop being so damn polite.
Yeah.
Now, if I could ask you, tell me a little bit more about this climate etiquette and why or how this has set back the fight against climate change.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. I mean, the pathological politeness or climate etiquette, it's evidenced even at, and most importantly in some ways, at the level of the UN reports that everybody talks about whenever they come out. And we talk about them for about 2 weeks before we stop talking about them. Reports of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. These reports are important. They're good. They're done by smart people who are committed to making a better world. And we get these reports and we're worried about what they report on. These are scientists. They're not fooling around. But what we rarely know is that, this is science by consensus, first of all. And I discussed this in that section on climate etiquette. The results that are published are consensus document. It's a consensus document. I mean, so you have a group of people like us, and they find the middle position that they can all agree on. They write it, and then they give it to the politicians who edit it. So, for example, only the last report, and it was the secondary report, like a review, I can't remember what it's called, but only in that secondary report, that's the first time in the history of the ICPP reports, or the IPCC reports, that capitalism was mentioned. I mean, here we got a situation where everybody knows that climate change is caused by carbon emissions. Well, what causes carbon emissions? Industry. What causes industry to create carbon emissions? Well, the need to make profits. In other words, an economy has to be growing. This is why Trudeau would use that line. He normalized it for us in our minds, but we need to grow the economy, say. So we should invest in some pipelines while we're growing these other, alternative means, but we're going to grow the economy. Well, I think some stat that I throw around in the book works something like this: 2 or 2.5% increase to your GDP every year for 20 to 25 years doubles your economy. That doubles your emissions. Well, the emissions that are already in the environment are already baked in, and we're going to feel them for the next X number of decades. And so I think, are we doomed? We're definitely doomed to see 2 degrees over industrial norms. That's guaranteed. The question really is it going to be 3? How about 3.5? Well, we already see that the difference between 1.5 and almost 2 is it's a lot. So we're going to see 2. We're going to see 2.5. The question really then becomes, how do we stop it from going past? How do we stop it wherever it is? It doesn't matter what it is. If it stops at 2.2, that's better than 2.3. And my entire, book is devoted to the idea that we should and we can and we must stop it from going to another level beyond where it is right now. So yeah, we are facing climate catastrophe for sure. In the minds of some people, that would make me and others like me a doomer. And doomers, we already know from psychologists, because they've done the studies, that being a doomer does not incline people to change their ways. In fact, they feel depressed, and they say, well, I can't do anything about it, so I might as well buy another car, and yada, yada, yada. So there's been a real push back against doomers. But my response to these people is the same response of Andreas Malm in his great book called How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which is not about blowing up pipelines anyway, it's just it's a clickbait title. But its response is to say, the path that we've been on, which I call pathological politeness, has got us to the point where we're at almost 2 degrees above. Why don't we try talking to people like they're adults? You can use salty language with adults even, and tell them that the same thing that the scientists have been saying for quite a couple of decades at least, and that's the line that's usually used by them. The line is, we're fucked. Okay, let's take them seriously. Okay, we're fucked, and then what? Because we're not all going to die right away. The world is not going to end. What it's going to be is decades and decades of a less decent place to live, a less civil place, a nastier place. For my money, we're already seeing it all around the world right now. We're seeing it in America, leading edge of fascism in the West, following Hungary and Turkey and Argentina down a path of unfreedom. So when I'm critiquing capitalism and critiquing techno-feudalists and people like Donald Trump, it sounds like I'm not talking about climate change, but I'm talking about it all. It's being caused by profit-driven motives. Without the profit motive, without the desire for the need for growth, economic growth, without the need for capitalism, we can stop unnecessary emissions. We should stop making stuff we don't need. We should stop building things like my phone that is designed to fail within a certain amount of time that I agreed upon that after 5 or 6 years, I'm okay buying another one. No. Remember when they used to build things in the 1950s that lasted for 20 years, 30 years? They got smart about that. Planned obsolescence is not a conspiracy, it's a fact. Things are designed to fail. That's so that they can continue to make profits. Apple slows down your computer so you get rid of it and get another one. That's a criminal act in my mind. So we can still make stuff. We just have to regulate the people who make it so that they can't make stuff to break. They can't make stuff that it can't be repaired. How many times have you guys bought something, doesn't work 3 weeks later, you bring it back to the stereo shop and they say, we'll just give you a new one. It's not worth fixing. In fact, you can't fix them. You can't even open them. We also now, as you know, if you have a fan that breaks down or something, there's no one that does that kind of work anymore. There's no technicians anymore. So you need to actually promote repair. These are a lot of the small action items that you can do to make the world a better place. And so it's not going to be better in the future, but it doesn't mean that we can't find ways to live meaningful lives if we embraced a universal basic income for everyone. If we had free transportation. I'm starting to sound like Avi Lewis. There's a reason, because nobody speaks like Avi Lewis or Mamdani or even Bernie Sanders. You know why they don't speak like that? Because they'll get elected. The powers and the billionaires will spend as much money as possible to make sure they lose, except for when they don't, like Mamdani. And what do people say when they get elected? I wonder how long before somebody assassinates him. That's how accustomed we are to a crisis of stasis that nothing can change. Of course it can change. It can change and it must change. My point is it's going to change no matter what. So it's going to get worse. But how can we make it better? Well, we can make it better by embracing something like socialism. And you don't like that word? Communism. Oh, you don't like that word? Find another ism. Call it whatever you like.
Let's just, if you just draw back to capitalism for a moment.
Good.
We all grew up with it. It's baked into our lives, as you say. And for a lot of people, I'm sure they just can't imagine life without it. To be like telling people that they can learn to live without air. In that circumstance, how do you convince people to abandon capitalism for another system move forward?
I would say, first of all, that capitalism has abandoned us. In my opinion, 2008, pick a time. In my opinion, we're not actually living under conditions of capitalism anymore anyway. This is why Yanis Varoufakis calls it techno-feudalism. We're living in a new kind of feudalism. Some other people call it new feudalism. We delude ourselves into thinking that capitalism requires freedom. That was convenient when you needed workers to do work for you. You maybe even pay them enough to live. We're moving into an age of artificial intelligence and this rentier capitalism where we don't own music anymore. You don't own an album. You don't own a CD. You rent it from an entity, and they turn it off or not on, and you pay for it, but you don't own it.
Even our products are sometimes based on a subscription model.
Yeah, this is Sam Altman's claim recently, about 2-3 weeks ago. The goal of the future is to introduce AI, and we can rent back to people intelligence for a monthly fee, like a utility that you'd have to have. Well, that'll work once you stupefy the people, as America has done a really great job trying to do. People are not dumb. They're just not being educated. And you get 2 or 3 generations of that, and they don't know up from down. They know they're angry, and I'd say they're right to be angry. But if you don't float a Bernie Sanders candidate, Bernie should never have ran within the Democratic Party. He should have ran as an independent and been a possible spoiler, because they're already spoiled. He needed to run as an independent candidate so that people have somebody to vote for, because if they don't, a demagogue like a crazy person like Donald Trump that everybody would have laughed at. We did laugh at him because he's a joke. They'll vote for him out of a sense of F you to the elites. But he is the lead. And they're starting to get the idea that, what, you're going to bring back the draft? Yeah. Keep it up, America. You're going to have a general strike. I pray. That's the next step. The Americans don't know how to be French about it. You need to shut the place down until they put them in jail, till they change whatever. So that's why I say the action item on the agenda isn't, yes, we can try to pass made to repair legislation so that companies have to have products that are repairable. That's a good idea. But the real action item has to be, we need to change capitalism to something else.
The path forward is going to be, as you've already alluded, is going to be very difficult. Do we have to change in our own minds what it means for us to be happy, to live a happy life, a good life?
It's a really good question, but I actually think no. I think that if you ask most people who've worked any amount of time, I don't know how much time, how many years or months or minutes it takes for you to work in almost all jobs before you realize this is what it is. This is what my life is. People find happiness outside of their work unless they're very, very lucky. I'm one of them. I actually like what I do. I take it for much less pay. Just don't tell them. You know what I mean? How many people live lives of happiness? Well, I'll tell you what people realize as they get older, I think, is they realize that happiness is your family, happiness is community, happiness is helping out somebody to do something, feeling good about yourself, happiness is having some kids, seeing them grow up and play, learn an instrument, have fun, fall in love, be unhappy, just life stuff. You know how you get that? Not working. Work is not the answer for happiness. A universal basic income is where happiness is. Not that it's going to be easy to have the time to do whatever you want in your life, because that's a different burden, right? The burden of deciding what it is you want to do with your life when you have the essentials taken care of, that is a meaningful life. Because I guarantee you're going to learn how to play guitar better, and you're going to get together with your buddies, and you're going to entertain people at night you don't have to get paid that much because you have enough to live. You got a place that's affordable. That's happiness. We don't have that at all. And that sounds much more like, utopia. Hey man, the Western G7, the G7 economies are so incredibly wealthy. We could have had a UBI with no trouble. no trouble at all.
Doesn't sound so different from the way we used to live. Just before, we used to have so many gadgets and distractions.
Exactly. People often say to me, well, yeah, but what about not having a phone? Well, I'm old enough, as most of you here are, that I can remember, you leave home, your parents make sure you have a quarter in your pocket so you can use a payphone to call them if you run into any trouble. You're not happier because you have a phone. The truth is, you're probably more burdened by it, the way that I am looking at it all the time. I'm wondering, did somebody, if I just got it vibrated in my pocket, this is not happiness, it's just something. It's interesting, but it doesn't mean that it's an answer. It doesn't mean what happiness is. Happiness is something to do with leading a philosophically speaking, a meaningful life. And a meaningful life is actually impeded by all the things that capitalism holds up as things you should do, because if you do them long enough, you'll make enough money so that you don't have to work. If you're lucky, you can achieve that. But the problem is, if it takes you 15, 20, 30 years to get there, by the time you're finished doing that, you're addicted to the grind and you don't know how to be happy anyway. This is why it's hard to retire. What are you going to do? That's the same. Retirement is the first time, because we have a retirement plan. You can go, who am I? What do I want to do? That's a question I'd like to get to 18-year-olds. What am I going to do with my life? You got your whole life figured out. Poet today, guitar player tomorrow, whatever.
When you say working class, you've alluded to that. You've listed your prescription for change, and one of the things you mentioned is more automation, fewer, shorter work weeks. But that is, I would argue, right now, probably the second greatest fear among people right now is AI and the loss of jobs and what AI is going to do to our sense of truth and our trust in institutions. How do you kind of see, or how do you square that?
Yeah, this is classic, right? I mean, what the left tends to want to do historically is to, break the loom, make sure that people still have their jobs, make sure the AI doesn't come along to take all of our labor. Of course, we're only coming around to that decades after we already did that to blue collar workers, right? We absolutely squeezed them as hard as we could. White collar workers are going to get squeezed now like they were. And now we're seeing people because they write for a living, they're reporters, they're accountants, they're lawyers, and they're going to lose their jobs to AI. My view about this is informed by a book called Invention of the Future, which is one of the most important books I've read in the last 10 years, easily, maybe 15 years, I can't remember. It's by a Canadian guy and his colleague in the UK. I can't remember the names. One of the names is Williams, and anyway, it's called Inventing the Future. The book is divided into two parts. What's wrong with the left, and what are we going to do? What's wrong with the left is the left has spent its whole time attacking each other. And what the right has done is they've created allyships between disparate parts of for example, American society. So you have billionaires and millionaires standing next to evangelical Christians, standing next to anybody that will help them knock down Roe versus Wade. I don't care if I don't agree with you, and I think you're a laughable human being, but we'll do that anyway. Donald Trump is the end result of that. Yeah.
I think there's a sense among a lot of people that the game is rigged. Billionaires, technocrats, they've won, and there's no way to seize back control. How do you get around or defeat that default setting of?
Let me. I lost my moment there. Thank you. Cernicek and Williams, Inventing the Future. The argument that's counterintuitive to answer the previous question was that we need to, on the left, actually embrace automation. Not just that the call is full automation. Automate all jobs that are being done by labor that nobody wants to do. Do you want to work at a Tim Hortons or something that's light manual retail work? Let's automate all of it. Get a universal basic income so that they don't have to worry about working those jobs. And once you get a universal basic income, people don't have to take those jobs unless they pay them properly. the only reason you take a job like that is because you have no options. So the reason why people that are from the elites don't like UBI, including Doug Ford, is because the worry is that you put power back in the hands of labor. This happened during COVID and after COVID. It was hilarious. My dentist, I show up. Where's all the dental hygienists? Ah, well, 2 of the 4 of them quit. I said, well, why is that? They didn't want to come back? I guess they don't want to work. No. They don't want to work for you, for the money you're paying them. And COVID made them realize, man, I pay quite a bit every week to go to work. Keeping my car up, having nice clothes, buying new shoes, buying lunch. I could just not go to work. And that little bit of money that Trudeau gave people that got it, was enough for me to go, oh my God, I don't need much to exist. I can do what I want to do. And that's what'll happen if you have a UBI. And I think that's why people like Doug Ford don't like it. Jobs that people don't want to do, people would have to be paid appropriately to do them. Right now, the hardest jobs are often the jobs that pay the least. It's absolutely insane. Anyway, sorry. So the argument on this new left position by Cernicek and Williams is that you need to embrace some of these things. You need to embrace technology because you're not going to stop it, but you need to make AI work for people, not against it. And AI could be great. I mean, the quantum stuff and all, like the way it could destroy the world, let's put that aside. We need to regulate the thing. But if AI says to people, you don't have to spend your time being an accountant anymore or doing that kind of lawyering that you can do better by a machine. You're free to do something more meaningful than that. It was necessary before. It's no longer necessary now. What do you want to do with your life? Back to the existential question. We want to do something meaningful.
Well, I guess it all depends on who's in control of the AI as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's dangerous. And it uses up a lot of energy.
Well, there is that whole resource question. How much water and energy it eats up a minute? Is it justified?
It is absolutely not justified until we know that we have an AI that's working for us and not against us. My paranoid feeling, you got it from the book, maybe you got a bit of that. My paranoid feeling that is, it was from Gosh and from Jacob Wallace Wells, is that the elites, the Musks of the world, the Peter Thiel, who's an insane human being, they want us dead. That's what I think. Okay, at some point when they're wanting us dead, we'll rise up. My thing is, we should do that now, because we have the numbers still. You can shut the economy down. You can go on a strike in America and shut the economy, make them listen to you. Wait long enough. Wait. Now they don't care. We don't need your labor. Now, I don't know how they continue making money, but when they have all of it, I don't think it matters anymore because they built their fortresses and their 5 yachts and et cetera, et cetera. This is a feudal system and we are reduced to serfs again. Let's not wait until we're serfs before we rise up. And I think in America, there have been glimpses, and in Canada too, but in America, it's obviously more important because it's the heart of this beating capitalism. We have moments of anti-globalization, Black Lives Matters, the anti-Wall Street movement before that, the ICE issues in Minnesota, where you have not just professional agitators trying to stop ICE, you have teachers, retired people, people that are former military people, standing there willing to risk being hurt by Gestapo-like goons. That gives me hope for people. That's what I think most people are, actually. I don't think they're the assholes working at ICE who are doing it for the money, and maybe because they're little fascists. Most people are like those people. Probably most of the people sitting here because you're self-selected to come and listen to me talk about this. People are good, actually. They're bad when they're forced to be bad, when they're starving. Then they'll do anything they have to do. Let's not make people starve. Let's make the conditions so that people can be good and happy, getting back to our theme.
Well, back to that question, I think you've answered it in a way that I was talking about the sense of the game being rigged. How do you move past this belief that the billionaires and technocrats are always going to have control? Is it just then that we've reached a tipping point where people are starting to say,
Yeah,
just had enough?
yeah. The tipping point, if they go too far, will be the French Revolution. A person I follow on Facebook who posts the best memes has something called the guillotines for a better America. He's hilarious, right? He's like ironical, but he means it in a certain way. Until, and another line that I have that I cite from an economist, I can't remember his name right now, but his line is politicians used to fear the people. Now the people fear the politicians. You must make the politicians fear us. Okay, get on the street. Threaten them. I go out of my way to make sure to say I'm not advocating violence. What I'm trying to say is the violence is inevitable. It's gonna happen. Also, being impoverished is a systemic violence against us. The violence that you see happening from protesters in Minnesota is defensive. They're not out there trying to hurt anybody. I mean, they were amazing. They dressed up in funny costumes. They, tried really hard, successfully, not to give Trump an excuse to declare martial law. Because isn't that what he's trying to do? Everybody knows what he's doing. It's obvious what he's doing. People are smart. They did not want to hurt a cop or an ICE agent. They are the ones hurting the woman named Good. The violence is theirs. Our response will be seen as violence. It will be seen as terrorism, but it's defense. And what is it defense of? It's defense of the planet. It's defense of life. It's defense of civility. And there you have this ironic moment. Sometimes you have to fight to protect what you love. And that's where we are, it seems to me.
You spent a good portion of the book, well, a lot, but you had a section talking about COVID. You mentioned it earlier, the impact of the pandemic, when people weren't driving, weren't flying, they were staying at home, baking sourdough. But you also noted that all the expected impacts, where everyone was hoping this would make a great dent in the carbon footprint, it really didn't measure up, and it didn't really make much of a difference. But so what is that? Does that put the lie to the notion that individual action will amount to a great change, or does it just really indicate where the true responsibility lies?
Yeah, right. I mean, that the last part of it is what the true responsibility doesn't lie in us stopping to use plastic bottles or recycling or switching from straws. Great, but it's not going to save us now. Maybe if we started doing these things in 1979 or 1983, it might have made a big difference. It would have delayed what's happening now another 10 years, maybe. And we'd still be in this problem. It's been accelerated by our consumption, there's no doubt. But consumption, while it's a big problem, the real problem is systemic. It's that capitalism and profits, corporate profiteering requires us to keep buying and selling. And without it, the economy fails. And we do our part for it. We do our part for it because there's no choice. You got something in your pocket that you need now. It's called a phone. You got to have it working. And if it breaks down, you got to buy another one. You can't get out of that because you need it. People that are poor have phones now because they need it to be part of, et cetera, et cetera. It's important that people feel they have something they can do, but what we really need to do is change the system itself.
Yeah, you see the government making taking these measures, like banning single-use plastics and as you say, the straws, and it's just a measure. Is that just a measure to show that they think they're doing something while ignoring the fact that we need to make that systemic change?
It's basically kind of greenwashing. If you really want to stop, the plastic issue, you attend to the plastics that are used in the netting they use for fishing that is cut off and left in the ocean. There's a lot more than the straws we're using. It gets caught around a fish and causes all kinds of problems. But we can't stop that because the industry, the food industry is based on it being able to sell fish at a certain price. And to get fish at a certain price, you got to fish them in a certain way. And that is a way that's destroying the oceans that we live off of. So we're in real trouble with the oceans anyway. So there's that, overfishing, dumping all kinds of sewage and other plastics there. But also it absorbs the carbon emissions that we put out there. And we have an acidification of the oceans such that life will not live there forever. Warming of the oceans in a way that is pushing various species north towards Canada. I mean, Halifax, they get sharks out there all the time now, which is interesting. But they just move. But they can't escape from the earth, and neither can we. And also we have the collapse of the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional overturning circulation, sometimes confused with the Gulf Stream. Gulf Stream is the air that moves heat and cold back and forth. The AMOC moves the heat in the water. You get a lot of fresh water flowing into it from Greenland, which we do know. It kills the conveyor of hot and cold, the result of which could be a 3 to 10 degree increase in or a decrease in temperature in Europe and the UK. And it'll also turn, the lungs of the earth, the Amazon, into a savanna. I mean, that's where we're going. And it's possible that it's too late for that, for a chunk of that anyway. So we got to figure out how to live with it and what we can say. What can we say moving forward? Should we ask for some questions? Why not? Does anybody have any questions? Because we'll go on. That's my business, professing.
Yes, rather than a question, I guess I have a comment. I'm a substitute teacher, and I was a teacher, and I must say 90% of the time I really love my job. But I was talking with a teacher assistant who's from Algeria. I work in French schools, so there's people coming from all over French-speaking countries coming to Manitoba. And he mentioned that, what students need is to be inspired. And I thought, inspired. At the end of your book, you begin to inspire when you mentioned how we succeeded in combating the COVID situation. So I guess Greta Thunberg, when she organized the student strikes and that, she was inspiring them to into action. So anyway, I think the secret to achieving what we want is inspiration, that we become inspired to change our planet or to save our planet.
Right. This is why Mamdani is so amazing, because he's inspiring every time he speaks. He's such a good speaker, Mamdani. Even when people troll him, he's good with that. I'm a working class guy. My first response is to get mad. His first response is to actually have a little fun. He's awesome. We need leaders like that. I'm not the one, but there are people out there. I mean, for me, again, not to be I've never been an NDPer historically, but Avi Lewis is the only person in Canada that's in a position of any kind of authority whatsoever that can make this actually talking sense.
You mentioned in your book, New Zealand's former president, Carter. Do we need more leaders like that, or do we even, or should I say, do we need more women world leaders?
I think there's a lot of women world leaders that are just as capable of advancing neoliberalism as the men. Margaret Thatcher is a great example. Jacinda Ardern, I think she's great. She's pretty progressive, but I think she's basically a liberal. I don't think she'd hold a candle to a Mamdani or even a Bernie. And I'm hoping, despite the kind of naysaying you hear from mainstream media in Canada about Avi Lewis. Oh, he's in a party that is tanked and blah, blah, blah. I mean, remember, Trudeau was in a party that tanked too. It was not going to have, maybe was going to have lose its status as an opposition party altogether. Well, that's why they gave it over to Trudeau. Trudeau was like, oh, well, we're going to lose, give it to Trudeau. And what he did was he started telling us truth bombs. And everybody went, oh my God, the guy's actually speaking to us like adults. When he got in, he stopped doing that. I don't know what an Avi Lewis would look like in power, but I do know that the people will treat him, in my opinion, exactly like Mamdani. They will welcome him as an alternative to what we see here. And the only left alternative in Canada, there is no left in Canada. No official left. There's no, he's it. So I support Avi Lewis as a matter of principle. And because he's a truth speaker. I don't know what he'd be like if he was in power, but I think he's going to do a lot better than the mainstream media has been saying. And I don't think it'll take very long because Carney is being Carney. He's a banker. He's an investment banker, and he's going to be disappointing us from here on in. And Trump won't last very long, I hope. Or he'll get worse, and there'll be real problems in America. And then we'll stick with Carney until that is cleaned up. But anyway, we'll see. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, hi Todd.
Hi.
I haven't read your book yet. I'm
What?
someone else in our house. But my question is, in your book or just generally in your sort of philosophy, where do you place the sort of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the movement of Indigenous peoples to sort of have a voice now in politics? We have What Can You Now here in Manitoba. So I'm just wondering, sort of like, you haven't mentioned that, and I'm just wondering if that's part of the overarching philosophy, or if you have where you place that in your philosophy.
Yeah, I mentioned it toward the end of the book that we can look to Indigenous ways of living, especially the idea of looking far many generations into the future in order to actually do our planning instead of short-term capitalistic planning, which is all about making profits right now for me, not even for my kids, for me. Yeah, so 7 generations hence, looking at the future, that's one way. But I would say that the best discussion of this is by Naomi Klein, and in her book, This Changes Everything, and she calls it Cowboy and Indian Alliances. And she says leftists and activists have embraced Indigenous people for the purpose of saving the planet, which is to say advancing the cause of their treaty rights in order to stop people from doing the kind of industrial work they want to do by insisting on the law. And I think that's a pretty smart thing to do. So insofar as Indigenous people have rights over all of Canada in some way, and we can activate those rights and support those rights, we stop the forward march of capitalism. The problem, of course, is that many Native people, many Indigenous people are capitalists, and they want development as much as everybody. So we've got to find a way of offering advancement out of impoverishment, if that's the situation, that is humane and sustainable moving forward. And that's a different matter. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Did I talk you into a stupor? I bored you. We can keep going.
You mentioned, if I can ask, you mentioned left populism earlier. And that the only way forward, or one of the ways forward, is through some form of collectivism and left populism. Right now, whenever I think of populist leaders, whether they're from the left or the right, I think of ones who cater to their base with broad stroke promises, what they want to hear, but not a lot of substance. What is your view of left populism? What do you mean when you say left?
I mean, I'd consider Mamdani a left populist. He's attractive, he's intelligent, he's funny, he advocates for the people. You want a grocery store, he's going to try to make that happen. He's going to make the owners of apartments pay for repairs using the laws that already exist and force them to do so. he, like every left-leaning person, is going to insist on having something like a universal healthcare system. In America, that's a problem for us. We have one that people would like to get rid of so that we can replace it with the private system, so we can charge more, we can make more money. We in Canada need to absolutely insist that these moves by the Doug Fords of the world and others like him to get rid of the things that we have that are great in Canada, the things that I used to think made Canada, made Canadians Canadian, is that we believe that everybody who gets sick should be treated for free and they shouldn't be bankrupted by it. I can get behind that. I can't tell you what it means to be a Canadian. I can tell you some things that are Canadian. Healthcare, some sort of welfare, free education for young people that's of decent quality. Hands up when it's necessary. You need a hand up. We have some sort of social welfare program that protects people from dying. That's humane. A country that doesn't have every city populated with 10 cities. That's not normal. Imagine being 10 years old today. These 10-year-old kids think that's normal. Well, it's normal now because we haven't stopped yet. That is insane. Normalizing open impoverishment in all of our cities. We live in an insane moment because we're wealthy. That's not necessary. That is not necessary. That's a reflection of austerity economics. That's neoliberalism. Come home to our cities. And we think, oh, well, capitalism, you can't avoid it. Oh, yeah, you can. And by the way, that could be you. If not you, your kid or your neighbor. We need to look after people better. In Canada, we used to do that. That was as a matter of course. I think we should do it again. I'm happy to go on forever, but I think we're supposed to go stop 4 minutes ago.
No, absolutely. If you have any closing comments, or if you'd like that to be your closing comment, or
I would say thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. It's nice out today. It's always like this in Winnipeg, right? Every time I come here, it's beautiful. Every time I'm here, it's beautiful. My daughter really wants to move here, and it means I might retire here in 5 or 6 years if she does that. And I also dedicated this book to her because I'll embarrass her to dedicate it, because I only get to do this once in a while. I dedicate this book to Chloe Dufresne, the smartest, kindest daughter possible, and to readers yet unborn. The book is written for the future. It's not written for us because we're going to skate through until we're dead, probably. We'll probably be okay. It's the young people that are in trouble, and anybody who's young knows it. Goethe once said, it's a horrible world to be young in. We're there now and then some. Worry about the young people. Anybody under 30. Anybody under 35 is having a hard time with it. Let's do it for them. Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it.
thank you so much.
We'll promise something exciting about a book signing.
Oh yes, this will be absolutely thrilling. I should have go on the announcement, actually. We are at the close of the event, so we will transport Todd from that chair to that chair, and he will happily sign books for you. Please do feel free to get a book signed before you pay for it. Please pay for the book. Thank you. It helps keep the lights on and helps keep us able to present events like this. McGill-Queen's University Press also is such a huge help, not only in publishing the excellent books that they do, but also in making sure events like this can take place. So huge thanks to them. Much gratitude to Dean Pritchard for leading us through this conversation as well. Please give another round of applause to Todd Dufresne and Dean. Have a wonderful evening.
John. Thanks, everyone. John, can we get a photograph? Yeah. I promised people that I would actually get a proper photograph. Chloe, you want to take it? Come on. Airbnb on Ruskin Road. Hi, Annie. Yeah, 3 of us.
Right. Here, everyone's strike the pose.
Don't make it crooked.
Oh, okay, sorry, I think it looks better quickly.
No,
All right.
I can always turn it crooked.
You wanna close up?
Yeah, get in here.
While you're here.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you both so much.
Nice job.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
There we go. I'll send you home.
Are you heading out?
Well, I'm gonna have browse.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you. I'll see you in 3 or 4 years for the next one. I'm gonna do it that way. Thanks, everybody. If anybody's leaving and doesn't want to buy a book but want to shake my hand, I'm happy to do that too. Or I can fist bump. That's fine. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.